What is going on, everyone? My name is No Pun Intended, and welcome to coverage of my Week 8 battle for the UBC. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like or a comment on it. I would very much appreciate it. But before we get into the actual semantics for the battle, I do want to say that I paid a few transactions prior to playing this game. I knew from the moment I inherited this team that it was pretty flawed, but I didn't know what exactly I wanted to fix on it until after I had played a few games. But there were some key things I wanted to address with these transactions, because I only had 3 of them, so I needed to make them count. But before we talk about those flaws, I might as well address the mons that I ended up deciding to cut from the team while I had the chance. So, first up on that, we have the most expensive mon on the list, the 14-point Keldeo, and really I just felt like it was so redundant on this team. It's kind of more of an offensive water type, but I already have quite a bit of offense with, well, the rest of my team. You've got Cart, you've got Medicham, you've got Mimikyu. I didn't really feel as though I needed its breaking ability. Its speed tier was somewhat redundant with Kartana. I already had a pretty powerful fighting type with Mega Medicham, and I felt like there were much better water types that were available than Keldeo. I kind of like it when my water types have access to decent coverage moves. Like, at the very least, it needs a good ice attack. And Keldeo's best is either Icy Wind or HP Ice, so it just didn't really fit what I wanted to do. And having that powerful physical fighting stab with the Secret Sword doesn't really help when you have a bunch of potential fighting type options on the team already. So while Keldeo has come for the past 2 weeks, I've generally been pretty unimpressed by it. Like, it's supposed to be an expensive mon that teams have to really stress out to prepare for, but I don't get that sense from it at all. The other 3 mons I dropped are a bit less expensive than that, but I still felt as though I wasn't going to use them over the course of the season. I'm dropping both Moltres and Type Null. These two have a lot of things in common. I've drafted them before in previous leagues. They're both kind of legendaries, but the thing about them is that they're very flawed offensive-ish Pokemon. Moltres has very powerful Fire Stab with Fire Blast, 120 base special attack, and all that, but it doesn't have setup, and it doesn't have coverage, and that is very annoying for me, because when you get walled by mons like, say, Togekiss with your Moltres, it just kind of stinks. And Type Null is in a very similar boat. While it does get setup, and by the way, both Moltres and Type Null do get momentum with U-turn, Null has an issue where it gets kind of walled by Ghost types if you want to run like the really good Rust Talk set, and my team doesn't like Ghost types anyway to begin with, having a Snorlax and a Mega Medicham. And finally, we have Rotom Frost. I want my Rotom forms that I draft have a lot of defensive utility, being able to switch into certain types of attacks that I may need it to. And Rotom Frost is easily the worst of the Rotom forms in that regard. While it is cool that it does have electric ice stab coverage, and Bolt Beam is one of the most threatening pairs of attack types you have to deal with, Rotom's ice stab is Blizzard, and I don't trust 70 accuracy anyway. I originally was going to keep Rotom Frost on my team, but when I decided that I was picking up another better slow electric type, I felt like Rotom Frost was way more expendable. Those 4 drops gave me 31 points that I could use to pick any 3 mons to fix the holes on my roster. But without those 4 mons that I just dropped, there are a few things that I definitely needed to address. First off, my speed tiers are kinda questionable right now. I don't have anything between Vileplume at base 50 and Drapion and Gliscor at base 95. So getting a mon with a speed in the 70s or 80s would be very nice. Also, getting some kind of speed control would help out as well, whether it be through Tailwind or Thunder Wave or Trick Room. That would help out also with my speed tier problem, because it would mean that opponents can't just speed creep the mons that I have and feel comfortable. Because I dropped Keldeo, I need a water type to replace it. Water types are very important on my team because they cover a lot of the resistances that I need to types like Ice, Fire, Steel, and Water itself. And certainly there are a bunch of water types in free agency, as I just mentioned, so getting one shouldn't be a problem. It's just a matter of which one do I want. You also saw in the past 2 weeks that I didn't have great switch-ins to mons that could potentially run flying type attacks. Salamence in Week 6 and Mienshao in Week 7 are examples of that. I wanted a mon with good physical defense, and preferably it would also resist flying type attacks, but also resist normal type attacks. Ever since I cut Doublade and trade away Rhyperior, I found that was a bit of a weakness on my team, and I felt like it was really important to get that covered up. And finally, I definitely wanted better pivots, whether they had U-turn or Volt Switch or the Regenerator ability. I needed stuff to facilitate me switching into my offensive threats, because in previous weeks, I was forced to swap mons like Mimikyu and Keldeo directly into my opponent's attacks, and that really limited their viability. So with that in mind, I bet you're wondering who we picked up, and I aim to give you the answers. Well, I created a few permutations of mons I could pick up with the points I'd acquire from my 4 drops that fulfilled the criteria I was looking for. And then I talked with Matty Brawlock. He's probably my best friend in the Draft League community. There's a bunch of other potential candidates, but Matty, I think, is the one that I've been closest with over the years, and he's probably one of the smartest people I know, at least in terms of understanding the format. So, he gave me some advice, and he recommended the 3rd permutation that I came up with out of all the ones I presented to him, and looking back on it, I definitely agree that this was the best option I could have gone with out of my 4 potential choices. Now, I did slightly modify this permutation after realizing that I could get more points out of it. I didn't actually drop Rotom in this permutation at this point, but this was the rough draft that led to me making the pickups I did. So anyway, the first mon that we got out of this is Magneton. And if you're looking for a flying resist, Magneton is a 4 times, so it can act as a nice switch-in, especially if it's holding the Eviolite. It has access to both a slower and a faster Volt Switch, depending on whether you want to make it a Scarf set or not. The base 70 speed stat is really important for the roles it needs to fill, and that's the main reason I chose it over the slower Magnezone, who was also available to pick up. Also, Magneton was cheaper than Magnezone, so I could save my points for something else. It manages to trap Steel types, which is very good for my Mimikyu and my Kartana, because now they don't have to run fighting coverage in order to get past them. The second mon I picked up is even more important than Magneton. I'm going to get my Water type here, another semi-reliable pivot, a mon with great speed control, and in my opinion, one of the most underrated potential Pokemon in the draft format. I really like Slowbro. It's very naturally bulky, and that's before we take into account its Regenerator ability that extends its longevity even more. It's got a pretty nice array of coverage moves, its ability to speed control is fantastic with access to both Thunder Wave and Trick Room, and it has a bunch of other disruptive support moves as well. The big thing about Slowbro is that it resists a lot of the types my team is weak to. Kartana and Magneton both have fire and fighting weaknesses, Snorlax is weak to fighting as well, Gliscor is weak to ice and water, Mimikyu is weak to steel, and Slowbro takes not very effective damage from all of those. You remember the 2 mons that I lost to in the past 2 weeks? Salamence and Mienshao? Yeah, Slowbro beats both of them as well. It's just a great fit on this squad. I'm super excited to be trying out Slowbro again in Draft League, and I think it's going to do a lot for my team. Moving on to my last pickup, I really needed to get my second Stealth Rock setter. I didn't want to force Gliscor into that rock setting role because it's normally a very versatile Pokemon, so getting a second mon with access to Stealth Rocks would allow me to be more creative with my Gliscor sets. And originally I was going to decide between one of many 5-point rock type Pokemon. Rhydon, Regirock, and Armaldo all fit the bill there. But then, you see in my original permutation, I kept Rotom Frost on the team, and once I realized that I was more often than not going to be bringing Magneton over Rotom if I needed a bulky electric type, I realized I could upgrade to the 9-point Gigalith instead. It has much better special defense than any of those 5-point mons, thanks to Sandstream. It has good natural offenses combined with its high base power attacks, and my team really doesn't care that much about Sand. I have a lot of mons that are either ground or steel types, or who have reliable recovery that Sandstorm doesn't mitigate. So I had 1 point left of this, and I was out of transactions, so knowing that, I just asked around the league if anyone was willing to dump on me a 1-point mon in case they were doing something, and I did get one offer, which is how Alolan Graveler made it onto the team. Now, granted, its roles have already pretty much been filled by my free agents. I picked up Magneton as a bulky, magnet-pulling Volt Switcher, and Gigalith as a fat rock type, so it's not like there's a lot of room for Graveler to see the field either, but it's 1 point. I'd rather have 12 mons, and one of those mons being something I may bring 1% of the time, than to have 11 mons and 1 point just sitting there doing nothing. Certainly though, these new additions to my team will really help me to prep better for my upcoming opponents. Let's go take a look and see how well my team stacks up against the other squads in the UBC. Oh. I guess not well. Oh boy. Well, I mean there's one good thing we can take from this. Philadelphia is a city that prides itself on its underdog mentality. And this team is definitely an underdog. I mean, we're 2-5, I haven't won a game with it yet. And with the lowest base stat total in the league, for all of its mons, on average, we are gonna fight. Because we're from Philadelphia. We got that blue-collar mentality going on. You want some of this? Didn't think so. Anyway, I'm taking too long once again, much like I usually do with these videos, so let's get into the actual game. We're taking on Youngster Bill, coach of the Dallas Drampas. He's in quite a few leagues right now, UPA, which is my old stomping grounds, the Hive, Stab League. He's also another fill-in coach this season, although the team he took over has a worse record than the one I took over. Nonetheless, I know he's very, very good at battling and prepping, and he's not going to be easy to beat, in spite of the fact that his team only has one win on the season. And in spite of the fact that for the most part I think I have a good team matchup once again, especially with my new free agent acquisitions. But there are still some mons that I think give me some trouble. Latias and Mega Diancie both outspeed everything on my team, so it's very likely he brings both of them just because they can pretty much revenge kill whatever they want. Alone, Marowak is a problem just because I have a bunch of really slow mons, and Marowak hits really hard, and my new Slowbro is weak to ghost moves, so that's not very good. Bisharp's also tricky to play around, just because it has Sucker Punch, and if it manages to get up a Sword Stance, I have very few possible switch-ins for it. My two new physical tanks, my Slowbro and Gigalith, are weak to either of its stabs, so not the best situation, but the good news is he can't bring all 10 of his mons against me, so we'll see what we can do. But on to the team I brought for Week 8. We start things off with one of our new mons, my Slowbro. It's going to be an Assault Vest set this week because I can better tank hits like Latias' Draco Meteor and Zapdos' Volt Switch, and it's also one of my best checks to Mega Diancie. I can hit it super effectively with Scald and it'll do a ton of damage. I also have Ice Beam to cover Latias and Tapu Bulu. I have Flamethrower to cover Tapu Bulu and Bisharp, and then Psychic is my main way of hitting Toxapex, which is one of his biggest threats. The given special defense investment allows me to tank Zapdos' Volt Switch and then recover that exact amount of HP on average with Regenerator, so I'm not losing health every single time I come in with Slowbro on it. We have a Shukaberry Gigalith, and this is my main way of luring in Dugtrio. Heavy Slam actually gets an OHKO on a standard offensive Dugtrio spread, and with a Shukaberry, I can better tank even a Tectonic Rage from Dougie. It's not going to kill me if I'm at full HP and he decides to lead with it. That's why Gigalith is probably going to be my lead in this game. It's also my main Stealth Rocker, and that helps because I am bringing Gliscor this week, and now Gliscor doesn't have to run rocks, so that's pretty good. Next up, we move to Vileplume, who's my Tapu Bulu counter. Easily tanks any grass hit because it 4 times resists, and can recover health quite easily using Strength Sap on Bulu. The Payapa Berry is sort of important, because if he chooses to run Swords Dance Bulu with Zen Headbutt, then Payapa Berry means that Vileplume definitely lives a Zen Headbutt. If I didn't have Payapa Berry, it would be a roll to kill, but this ensures that if he tries to go for that strategy, Vileplume will be able to survive, take out Bulu, and then I don't have to worry about it. The point is, as long as Bulu is alive, Vileplume needs to stay alive as well. I also have Stun Spore, which is kind of important because his main switch-ins to my Vileplume are mons like Toxapex and Latias, and if I can paralyze either of those, in the case of Toxapex, I'll prevent it from being able to get off Scalds as often, and that'll help my physical offense, and if he goes into Latias, it means that my Mimikyu and my Medicham will be able to outspeed it. So Stun Spore is rather important in that regard, that it can help predict potential switch-ins if he locks himself into a grass move, or if he just goes for a grass move and tries to switch out, fearing a Sludge Bomb, and I can just paralyze whatever I need to, get the speed drop, and then my offense will have a much better matchup. The fourth move slot is for Hin Power Fighting, and is there to cover Bisharp, who's immune to Sludge Bomb and would get a Defiant boost from Strength Sap. I ensure that if he's at +1, which is Strength Sap plus Defiant boost, that I'll be able to survive his knockoff even if I'm holding Payapa Berry, and if he's holding Life Orb and takes 1 round of Life Orb recoil, Hin Power Fighting is an automatic KO, as it does minimum 91%. We move on to my Mimikyu. Originally, this set was going to be Trick Choice Scarf, so if he swapped into Miltank or Toxapex to survive attacks, that I would be able to cripple that Mon. But I was talked out of it by the person I mocked, and instead I decided to go with the Expert Belt. This ensures that Latias dies to Play Rough, even without a Swords Dance boost if it's an offensive spread, which is kind of good because I forgot about how Toxapex usually runs Black Sludge, and so my Mimikyu will be taking damage every turn if I tried that strat, so yeah. Mimikyu is also my best Latias check, and since Latias is a big threat, Mimikyu is going to be very important to keep healthy. But next up is Mega Medicham, and these 4 moves, Drain Punch, Ice Punch, Zen Headbutt, and Bullet Punch, do a good job of covering Bill's entire team. Drain Punch is the super effective move for Bisharp, Ice Punch covers Bulu and Latias, Zen Headbutt is my main way of hitting Marowak and Toxapex, and then Bullet Punch picks off Mega Diancie. The speed that I invested creeps a Jolly Tapu Bulu, so I'll be able to hit that with Ice Punch rather than Bullet Punch. And because I didn't need that much speed, I could afford to make my Medicham Adamant Natured and put in some HP investment. And that makes it even more of a pain in the butt for Bill to switch into, provided he has one of his slow mons like Bisharp or Tapu Bulu in at the time. And finally we have Gliscor. The person that I mocked recommended a Dual Dance Gliscor set in order to set up on mons like Miltank or Toxapex, or maybe even Zapdos if it's not running Hin Power Ice. is pretty good against his team, barring Grassy Terrain being up from Tapu Bulu, but there are plenty of mons that I can set up multiple Swords Dances and Agilities on. If his Toxapex isn't running Ace for whatever reason, I don't know why, then I would be able to set up rather easily, and even then, Pex takes a ton of damage from Gliscor's Earthquake, so I'm not really worried about that. The risk is that I'm not running any sort of recovery moves or protect or substitute to increase Gliscor's longevity. I'm pretty much relying on the Toxic healing in itself. Anyway, that's it for my team builder. The only thing left we have to discuss is the game. Looking at his team of 6, no Bisharp, no Dugtrio. That means that I'm gonna heavily focus on using Vileplume as my Bulu check rather than having to check Bisharp as well. And it also means that Gigalith, while it is still going to be my lead, isn't going to also be a Dugtrio lure either. It's going to be able to act more naturally and just throw off whatever attack I feel is necessary, rather than having to predict Dugtrio to come in. Still, Marowak is a huge threat, and Latias is a huge threat. I have to figure out a way to get past them. But with that having been said, let's hop into the game. As I'm going to start out with my Gigalith, as I mentioned before, and Bill leads with Tapu Bulu. Right away, I know Gigalith isn't safe, so I'm going to hard switch into my Vileplume. Bill reveals Zen Headbutt on his Bulu, but because of the Pyapa Berry, it does very little damage, and I can now fire back with a Sludge Bomb and see what he wants to go into. Turns out the mon he chooses is the Zapdos, and it's going to get poisoned, which is really, really nice for me, because Zapdos is a pretty annoying blend of an offensive and defensive Pokemon, so being able to chip it down every single turn will be very helpful for me to take it out. Unfortunately, the earlier Zen Headbutt damage puts Vileplume in a range where it can die to 2 Zen Headbutts from Bulu if he chooses to predict the Vileplume switching again, so if I can't get Vileplume in at the right time, I'm going to be in a very dangerous spot, and I can't keep Vileplume in on the Zapdos because it could have Heat Wave. So instead, I'm going to pivot back into my Gigalith, but Bill just clicks Volt Switch again, and he's able to go into his Tapu Bulu. And if he actually clicks Zen Headbutt here, then my Vileplume is in a very dangerous position where it might actually die from the range of health it's at, but thankfully he just clicks Wood Hammer, which I am able to take very easily, and I can just go for Strength Sap on the following turn to restore all the health that I lost. But now I realize that I need to keep Vileplume at or above 80% of its max HP in order to tank 2 Zen Headbutts from Tapu Bulu. So keeping Vileplume healthy whenever possible is going to be my main priority. If Vileplume is at or above 80% of its max HP, I can afford to make predictions and go for moves like Sludge Bomb and Stun Spore on incoming switches. So with that idea in mind, I am going to click the Strength Sap to put Vileplume at a range of health where it doesn't die to 2 Zen Headbutts, as Bill's going to switch in his Alolan Marowak, and conveniently, he gets an attack drop, which means that my Mons will be able to tank their hits better. Of course, you wouldn't know it based on my next play, because I bring in my Gigalith, and even with the Sugar Berry attached, it takes 40% from the Bone Meringue. Like, damn, Marowak. Either way, I know I can't take another one, so it comes down to, do I want to sack off Gigalith, or do I want to bring something else in? And I decide, you know, now's a good time as ever to activate the Toxic Orb on my Gliscor. It turns out the Marowak also knows Low Kick. I'm guessing that's for Snorlax, and I was actually thinking about bringing Snorlax as my Marowak check, so if I had done that, I would have been punished so hard. I would have been launched to the moon. Thankfully, I decided not to bring Snorlax, so it didn't end up mattering. But now I am free to click Earthquake. At least I thought I was free to click Earthquake, but in comes the Zapdos, and if I click Stone Edge, this bird would have been dead, but I didn't, so it's going to remain alive for at least one more turn, and now I have to scout for the Hidden Power Ice on it, so I am going to switch into my Slowbro, as Bill just goes for the Volt Switch once again, and is able to bring in the Marowak, which, again, I have no switch-ins to. I don't want to bring in Gliscor because there's a chance it might get 2-hit KO'd by Shadow Bone, so instead I just elect to sack my Gigalith. I don't really feel so it's going to get much of a chance to set up rocks during this game, so it's more worth it just to not have it around. And besides, after that I can just bring in my Mimikyu, and hopefully see what his switch-in is to it. I had a feeling that it would be the Toxapex, but this right here confirms it, and because Mimikyu can't break past Pex whatsoever, I need a switch in, so I go into Slowbro because it's the best thing I have to take a Scald, and it has Psychic Stab to smash this Toxapex in the face. But instead, he reveals Knockoff, I lose my Assault Vest, and that's going to make Slowbro's job to scout out the Zapdos a lot more difficult. But I can fire off a Psychic, but Bill switches into his Latias, and it's going to take nothing from that Psychic. And this play right here is going to be very, very important, because I don't know what kind of Latias this is. I'm thinking it might be offensive, but even if it is, I don't know what moveset it might potentially run. I have a pretty good feeling that this Latias isn't going to run Thunderbolt, so my Slowbro should be safe from that kind of super effective attack, but there is a chance he could be Shadow Ball. That move would hit my Mega Medicham, my Slowbro, and my Mimikyu for super effective damage. However, that move didn't really cross my mind at the time. I was thinking that his moveset would be Psychic, Draco Meteor, and then Ice Beam for the Gliscor. So with that in mind, I felt like my Mimikyu was just a good switch in, because I felt like he almost had to go for Draco Meteor here to get off some big damage on my Slowbro, and it was the best move to potentially kill me. And even if he went for a more defensive move like a Roost anticipating an attack, the Mimikyu would still be safe, and I'd be able to keep the disguise. So, admittedly, the Mimikyu switch-in was pretty risky, but it was based off of some kind of logic, and thankfully he does just click Draco Meteor, so my Mimikyu disguise remains intact. Now that I've caught him in this loop, I know that Latias is pretty darn important to him, and he's likely not going to let me just get off a free play rough on it, so I'm going to pull a very hard double into my Mega Medicham, anticipating the Toxapex to want to come out once again, as it's his best Mimikyu counter. And because I got this right, it puts me in a phenomenal position. In the same way that I don't have great switch-ins for his Alolan Marowak, he does not have great switch-ins for my Mega Medicham. The moveset I have hits his entire team super effectively, save for the Alolan Marowak. But that Mon gets outsped by Medicham anyway and would get 2-hit KO'd by Zen Headbutt, so I'm more than free to click it right here. And Bill's just going to choose to sack off a Zapdos, which is great for me because now I don't have to worry about that Mon outspeeding my Slowbro, Volt switching around, and doing that momentum-based stuff that Zapdos likes to do. So the score is now 5-5, and I'm feeling a little bit better about my chances of winning, but this next play is going to... I'm going to call it questionable. There's no way around it. It is definitely a questionable play on my opponent's part, because he's going to go right into his Mega Diancie. I have Bullet Punch my Mega Medicham. No matter what spread he has on Mega Diancie, I can ensure I get an Oko with Bullet Punch. Now, I don't know why Bill didn't just go into Latias and throw off a Psychic, because I really didn't have a whole lot for it, barring Slowbro, but even then he could just link Psychic into Draco Meteor, because it turns out he's actually a Life Orb set, which he will reveal slightly later on, or I think he did reveal that actually, so never mind. But there's no downside towards me clicking Bullet Punch and getting off a little bit of chip damage on whatever he chooses to intercept it. And the Mon that he goes into is, curiously, his Alolan Marowak, which puts it in range of my Mega Medicham's Zen Headbutt. Even if I hadn't gotten the crit on that BP, it still would have been a roll heavily in my favor to take him out. Now, Marowak going down is great for me, because if it got a free switch in on Slowbro, I had nothing remaining on my team that could stomach a Shadow Bone. So not having to worry about that is a great load off of my back. I'm much more content to deal with Tapu Bulu than I am Alolan Marowak, because I still have my Vileplume, and eats up Wood Hammers for days. Now, because my Vileplume is going to be at 89% by next turn because of the grassy terrain, I'm comfortable clicking Stun Spore here, anticipating him to switch into either his un-Mega Evolved Diancie, or his Latias, or his Toxapex. However, as he switches into the Latias, I miss the Stun Spore, and this stinks, because if I'd gotten this Latias paralyzed, my Medicham and my Mimikyu would have been able to outspeed and kill it in one hit. Instead, I'm gonna have to play a lot more conservatively around it. The good news is that I still have my Slowbro at full HP, and from there, it can take a Psychic and a Draco Meteor from this Latias, fire off an Ice Beam, and weaken it down to about 19%. Now, if he tries to kill me with another Draco Meteor, then he takes a huge risk there, because that gives me a free switch into my Mega Medicham, who can then just click Bullet Punch to revenge the Latias. And the only Mon on his remaining team that isn't weak to it, besides Latias, is his Toxapex. And you don't switch Toxapex in on a Mega Medicham. Now, perhaps I should have just stayed in with the Slowbro on this Latias and just continually Ice Beam it so that he would be at about 9% no matter what, and I maybe could have even stalled him out of a bunch of his roosts, but I felt like going into Gliscor was a bit safer, because now I can scout for any sort of super effective attack, and even if he switches out of Latias into something like Tapu Bulu, by bringing in Slowbro, I get an additional round of Regenerator recovery, which means that I can come back in with Slowbro on Latias later on in the game, and tank Psychic and Draco Meteor once again. And besides, I still have Vileplume as my dedicated Bulu switch-in. Takes a Wood Hammer, no problem. Now I can potentially go for Stun Spore, but instead I choose to go for Strength Sap. I could have actually afforded to just go for Stun Spore again, because I would have been at 89% at the end of the turn, but I guess I felt that Vileplume being at 100% would be somewhat helpful, and I didn't need to take the chance with Stun Spore, because now Bill knows that I have it. It really doesn't matter that much, though. I probably would have missed anyway. But now I can bring in Slowbro on Toxapex's Scald. He does snag the burn here, and that's going to hurt Slowbro's ability to check Latias, but otherwise, I'm still in a position where I can just keep throwing off attacks. And here I actually choose to predict either the Latias or the Tapu Bulu to come in, and I click Ice Beam and get off a big chunk of damage on the Bulu. That maneuver is going to put a lot of pressure on Bill to make plays. He doesn't do it right here, as I bring in the Vileplume yet again on the Bulu, and he just clicks a Grass move. But I do get another chance to fire off a Stun Spore and paralyze whatever he switches into, except no, I don't, because I miss on the incoming Toxapex. Like, I was hoping the game would do me a solid. Like, I had the guts to put a 75 accuracy paralysis-inducing move on my Vileplume, knowing that it's not a common move to put on it. So you'd think that the game would at least let me hit one of these Stun Spores, but not this time. Now I have to decide whether it's worth it to keep Vileplume in on this Toxapex and try to paralyze it. But I still have Slowbro at a pretty good range of health, so I don't want to risk getting Skull Burned, and I just decide to switch out. But he makes a play and goes into his Latias, which means that I probably should have double Stun Spored here, but I mean, I didn't know he'd be so aggressive with Latias, so there's nothing really I can do about that. I do, however, decide just to Ice Beam the Latias and see what he's going to do, because if he goes for Draco Meteor, the move that he's shown that he wants to click against me to deal the most damage to my Slowbro, he's going to get -2 special attack, and that will allow me to bring in one of my offensive threats a bit more safely. However, he just seems content to roost over and over again and let me get worn down by the burn, so eventually I'm like, you know what, I can go into Mimikyu, because if he decides to break his Roost Chain, he's probably not going to go for Psychic here. Instead he would go for Draco Meteor, and my Mimikyu's disguise would still be preserved. And I do get the play right, which means that the Latias has to switch out once again into Toxapex. Which means that I go into my designated Toxapex switch in my Slowbro once again, and he's going to make another prediction, this time bringing in the Mega Diancie. Now, I don't know what kind of spread this Mega Diancie is going for. I imagine it's more specially offensive because most of my team has physical defense as opposed to special. But either way, I designed my Slowbro to be able to bottle up Mega Diancie first and foremost. And even without my Assault Vest, I intend to wear it down as much as I can. So I'm just going to click Scald here. I bring it down to 7% with the burn, as Bill's going to choose to get up Stealth Rocks, which is an interesting play on multiple angles. On the one hand, it means that he can't kill off Slowbro with his Mega Diancie, because you're going to see this Moonblast does 51% to me, and I'm still at a range of HP where I don't die. But putting up rocks also impedes my strategy with Vileplume. I need Vileplume to be as healthy as possible as long as the Tapu Bulu is alive, and if he manages to get rocks up, then Vileplume is less safe of a switch-in to a Zen Headbutt. So putting up rocks is sort of a risk-reward play on Bill's part, and you're going to see how that turns out in the next couple of turns. Because now Tapu Bulu is going to come in on Slowbro, and now I have to decide, is it more worth it for me to switch directly into Vileplume and risk dying to Zen Headbutt if he gets 2 decent-sized rolls? Or should I just sack off Bro and get a much safer switch into Vileplume? So I thought about it, but Mega Diancie just died in the last turn, and that was one of the big things I wanted to keep Slowbro around to deal with. Now that Diancie is gone, I feel like I still have a check for every single mon he has left. I can use Mimikyu to check the Latias, I can use Mega Medicham and Gliscor to check Toxapex. So in my mind, I didn't really need Slowbro, and I didn't feel like I could get much Regenerator health back from it anyway because I was burned and Stealth Rocks were up. So I decide that I need to sack my Slowbro in order to facilitate my eventual switching into Vileplume. But this is the turn that he's going to lock himself into Zen Headbutt. Like, damn, he just cannot get a correct read with his Tapu Bulu. It's incredible. And the flinch he gets here doesn't matter because he immediately misses the next Zen Headbutt, and I just KO with Ice Beam. And I've mentioned that I like Slowbro, but this is probably the best I've ever played with it, this game right here. This was a good game for Slowbro, and it got 2 kills, so I'm more than happy with how it performed. Even though I have to sack his Latias on the next turn, but you can't have it all. So I'm going to go into Mimikyu because it's my best Latias check, and he's consistently gone into Toxapex on Mimikyu without fail. So because of that, I'm going to pull off what I think is one of my favorite plays that I've ever uploaded onto this channel. I'm going to double into Vileplume. And the reasoning for making that double switch is that Bulu is dead, so I don't need to keep Vileplume healthy. If I end up sacking it off to Latias' Psychic here because he just stays in, then good on him for doing that, but I have a feeling he's not going to, because Latias is his win condition. He can't beat me with Pex, basically. And if he does switch out, like I predict he's going to, then I just get to throw off a Stun Spore. So all around, just a no drawback play to go into Vileplume there. Now that Tapu Bulu had fainted, I didn't need to keep Vileplume around, and I could afford to play it more aggressively than I had before. But it also means that Bill was more likely to play more aggressively as well, because He's going to go immediately into Latias, and I was really close to clicking Stun Spore again, but I felt like he wouldn't pull the trigger right after his Toxapex got paralyzed, because if I get a Stun Spore off on his Latias, the game's over. I wanted to sort of lull him into a false sense of security that I wouldn't click Stun Spore on an already paralyzed Toxapex, so I felt like going for Sludge Bomb the first turn was more worth it, and then I could just start alternating between Stun Spores and Sludge Bombs, whatever I felt like, so his Latias didn't feel safe coming in, but apparently he felt like his Latias was safe coming in. So, due to that little mishap, I ended up sacking my Vileplume without getting the paralysis off on the Latias. And I really don't want to lose this game. I would have blown a 5-2 lead if I did, so I gotta make aggressive plays. So, I go with Mimikyu, I click Play Rough, he switches into Toxapex. It would have done nothing even if it connected, which it didn't. But now I realize that, well, he only has about a 22% chance to actually get a Scald Burn on me, 30% to actually get the burn if he goes for the attack, and then a 75% chance to actually get off an attack. So I'm like, let's just switch right into Mega Medicham right now, because I know the Pex is pretty passive, aside from getting burns, and I do get pretty lucky in that he does get fully paralyzed. But let it be known that even if he got the burn here, my play would have probably just been to spam Ice Punch, because if he tried to bring in Latias knowing that my Medicham couldn't hit him, then, well, that would be even worse. But because he didn't get the burn, I can just click Zen Headbutt on this turn. It doesn't actually kill Toxapex. That boy is bulky. But he doesn't get the Scald Burn anyway with the next Scald. Didn't matter. My next play was to click Ice Punch, just in case he tried to get cheeky and switch in Latias. I am able to kill the Toxapex from 7% with my attack. He can come in with his Latias and revenge me with Psychic, but I still have my Mimikyu alive, and even if he had broken my disguise earlier, I believe Shadow Sneak would have brought him into range where he would have fainted to his own Life Orb Recoil. But oh my gosh, guys, we finally have picked up another win. It has taken so long to get to this point. I'm not a complete scrub. I'm only a partial scrub. But hey, I do want to wish a good game to Youngster Bill. Definitely played hard, definitely made some really good reads in this game, but I really needed this, if only for my sanity. Like, I finally pulled out a victory. It has been such a long time, and definitely this is one of the best Draft League games I have ever played. Everything was just on point, and yeah, maybe I'm gloating a bit, but I haven't had a victory in a while. Like, please, give me this. But we have 2 games to go in the regular season, and they're both against teams currently projected to make the playoffs, so my goal is just to play spoiler and give them a challenge, and I'm certainly going to try my darndest to do that. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. Please make sure to leave a like or a comment on the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more Draft League content like this, and until I see you next time, take care.